Bloody chicks. Such a terrible start already. Loving the jams.
There we go.
I think I'll turn that up a bit too much sometimes. I get a little bit, get a little bit fired up with that.
I don't think you can get loud enough on that track. We love it.
You know what I'd love to see is like, you know how like on YouTube they have people doing the, what are they? When somebody else does it, cover. We would see if we can get somebody. Well, we know some musicians.
Yeah.
We might be able to get that
Make
to
your
use
own
it as
track.
a sample or something. Yeah. Right. Well.
The Where Are We Now episode.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to go with a number, but couldn't tell you.
Imminent launching. Where are we now?
We're actually on launch eve. So the official. I mean, we pushed it back 2 months from where we were. We had some behind the scenes admin and some soul searching to do on a few people and some life decisions to make. But it's launch eve. So we've got a Sunday afternoon / night, depending on how we go. I want to say we're probably 10 episodes in. This might be number 10, to be fair.
Yeah.
There was a few deleted. There's a few that haven't come out yet. I don't know when this one will be dropped. I'm assuming this will probably jump in before some other ones. Maybe it might be a cheeky midweeker. It might even be maybe a couple of days into our road trip that we've got going on. Because we'll be talking about stuff we're actually going to be doing that might be seen on our new Instagram profile, which is the Imposters Podcast AU.
Yep.
We had to put the AU on. Turns out there's a lot of people doing Imposter Podcasts.
It's a common problem that people talk about.
Yeah, there's subject headings. There's different ones. There was some other ones I saw that were pretty good. The Imposter Podcast, that was good. Yeah, I like that. Actually, I don't even think they said podcast at the end of that because they didn't need to because the old genius play on words. And yeah, I mean, what are we up to now? So now we've got, from what I've seen, we've got 100 listens, which is not bad considering we haven't been live. So that's just been a lot of test and adjust with friends and family, etc. And so far, I've not had any real negative feedback. I know Fedora cracks it over the birds, hence we've opened all the windows to make sure we get as many.
You're going to hear lots of birds today. We love it.
As many birds as we can today. What else have we had that's been interesting? I've got myself a free jumper out of speaking to somebody. That's exciting. I'm trying to get him on as a guest, but I mean, you can no doubt tell by my jumper who he is. But he does swear a lot and says cunnies, etc. But who else have we had? We do have coming up the Zero Limits podcast, so we're going on the road.
Yeah, pretty incredible week for us coming up, given that, we haven't launched until a little later tonight. But we set some pretty lofty goals for us early on, and a few things we've been given a few opportunities that we probably haven't earned yet. So it's pretty humbling, but yeah, it should be a pretty.
It's also very imposterish of us to think that. So for example, and I guess it's funny because no one's heard all the other podcasts, so they don't really know where we're at on what we've spoken to, and obviously we haven't promoted anything publicly, but. So one of the things that if you've listened to episode 1 and probably the ones after that, we've mentioned Savvy multiple times, and because we like Savvy, but it was more of a piss take. And then I also mentioned Monster, but Monster's not sponsoring us.
We're still waiting to
still waiting to hear back from them about our racing career, etc. But Savvy have been kind enough to give us an affiliate code. So before we even released, we've got ourselves a technical sponsor. I would suggest. Does affiliate come under a sponsor?
It's in the same category, but it's I think super humbling that we've been able to get even an affiliate going before launch. And it's funny, we could joke about other energy drinks, but ironically, we've been drinking this one, and there you go. It's got a good sound to it.
It does sound crisp when you open them,
but it's a nootropics brain booster drink, which. We had to look into a little bit ourselves, and we'll hopefully be.
Well, we didn't have to.
Well,
I didn't really care. I'll just do anything.
I was pretty keen to know a lot about it, but we'll hopefully be having the founder actually come up.
There's no hopeful about it.
Well,
Mark Curry.
Mark Curry will be on.
CEO of Savvy Beverages will be coming on the podcast.
Whether or not it's good for public consumption, I think I'll record about 4 hours with him just diving deep into what all these sort of nootropics products are and what they do.
He's the king of nootropics in Australia. However, he's also just such a good dude. trying to help out and stuff. Like he like, I was speaking to him on the phone. For starters, if you're going to speak to Mark on the phone, make sure you've got an hour, because for starters, he can talk, but B, you want him to talk. Like you'll ask a question, then that's it. Where he's trying to solve the world's problems for you. But so for example, I spoke to him about just an affiliate code, etc. I said, mate, I don't know if you're okay with it, but we've been basically slamming your name all over the place, saying that we're all about your drinks. And he was like, yeah, no dramas. He goes, I love that, mate. He goes, if you make it some reels and stuff, he goes, that's even better. So now we're doing the Savvy road trip. I've decided it's a sponsored Savvy road trip. But
we're going to have to get dragged to Byron Bay, kicking and screaming.
Yeah, well, he said he was happy to come down. And then I told Al about that, and I was like, no, I wouldn't have thought so. I'll be going to Byron Bay. Thanks very much.
Yep, we'll be definitely going up there, I think. But yeah, it's pretty cool. And, Mark also, or the Savvy brand, is kind of a good little mentor for us, essentially, because he runs a pretty, tight sort of Instagram marketing and videos, and we're pretty shocked this week to see, like, he sends out a personal thank you video to everyone as a first-time customer, which they've been around for a while. He's selling a lot of drinks. That's pretty damn committed. As
the CEO to come up, he was telling me he has a little notification that comes up for everybody that buys a new one, and it comes up on his screen with a reminder that you are to take the next 20 minutes to say thanks to everybody that buys a new product. I'm assuming, and then he was telling me there's little gifts that'll come in your email afterwards with him just waving, going, hey mate, good morning, hope you're doing well. And then, yeah, like I think if you make more purchases, he'll do another video, etc. But like as the CEO, like he is flat out doing all sorts of stuff. And then his affiliate codes, like that's an AI program that he's using, but he sets that up. So I spoke to him on the phone whilst he set that up. And then your delivery and stuff, I'm sure he does whether he actually has a company that does the deliveries for him, but I'm sure he's set that whole back end up. Like there's not much the bloke doesn't know about. And he's just got back from New Zealand, where he was speaking on behalf of the Pacific as the leading.
He's definitely one of those founders who he might be leveraging other people in the business now, but he's done like every single job in that business for quite a few years, and he's probably in that category where people would joke about him being an overnight success, but then you think, no, he's actually still making a personal video for every new customer. Like it's some people, it's hard work, and they hopefully get rewarded for it in the long run. So,
well, the other thing is he reaches out and he's like, if I can help you, he goes, I don't know what I can help with, but anything I can help you with, he's like, you let me know. I was like, well, I don't know what you can help me with, and he's got no idea either. But if something comes up and you're like, hey, Mark, what do you reckon the chances are of this happening? I can guarantee you he'll jump on board. So, yeah. Pretty excited about that.
I think, the other interesting thing over the last couple of months, and again, I say this with the preface that we haven't actually put anything out to the world yet, is just the talking to people and saying that we're trying to do this sort of thing. A lot of doors have opened, and a lot of time has been offered by people who, could definitely spend it better on their own pursuits. So I really hope that trend continues and we can provide value back to some of these relationships as well. But it's been really remarkable couple of months just even getting into the infancy of this.
That's not a bad little segue into Jared Goundry, the comedian who, he is ex-army as well. That's sort of a little bit of crossover there with how we've got him. We're actually in Timor together at the same time, which I didn't realise till he was telling some stories on stage. But we went and saw him at his show, and he was so excited about the fact that we turned up to come see him. He's like really thankful that we came out. Obviously, we sat in the front row because we're not scared. Well, I say that, and then you sat there.
You walked to the front row, and then we kind of had to sit around you.
Yeah, and then you sat there pretending you're a statue so they didn't notice you and call you out.
Here's a lesson if you go to any comedy. You think you wouldn't want to sit in the front row, but if you sit dead centre, you actually will get ignored. That's probably the key place to be.
You need to be directly under the lights.
True.
I think that's the secret, because you'll see them looking down like they're doing that, but to the sides – You weren't in the light, so they could see you plain as day.
We sat to the side of the front row and ended up as the targets a couple of times. So.
Well, Colby does have a mullet. He was asking for it.
He was asking for it.
But yeah, so he was Jared was good. He was funny anyway, so that was a win. So it wasn't a complete waste of time anyway, just going there to pretend he was funny. He was actually funny, so that was good.
Very, very funny. I hadn't seen in-person comedy for quite a while, and it's so good to have a good laugh, like a real belly laugh. That was nearly an hour with a couple of comedians. It was really good. Really enjoyed it.
But I think the other thing was what was there, 45 in there? I mean, it was sold out, but there was about 45 people there. But it's funny having it being so. I reckon that's scarier than having a crowd where you don't actually see anybody. Like any public speaking I've done, the bigger the crowd, the less concerned I've been.
I agree.
So that's really, it's a really sort of more intimate situation, and like because anybody heckling there, you can mutter it, and everybody there hears it.
Yeah,
and it's so there's not really you can't really throw a heckle without it being clearly heard, which is it's funny for both sides because he'll hear anything you have to say, which means but he's quick-witted and he's had a lot more experience. But it is interesting because if somebody's like, "Oh, this guy sucks," and you get up and walk off, like one person leaves out of 45, like that's got to hurt. Or you can lose 100 at 1,000, and you won't even see them; they're just leaving from the back.
The other thing I really liked, and he's a fairly accomplished comedian now, but there was two comedians on before him, and then he was the headline, and he had multiple references in his bits to things that had been said in the opening too. So it speaks to the commitment when every night he's obviously sitting through the other ones to add to his, being personal with the people that are there, where you could just be down having a drink or turn up 5 minutes before your segment's going to be on. So I was impressed with that. He
also introduced him. And he was saying that he does the video stuff, like that camera that was there.
Yeah, that
was him, and he does edits for him and stuff like that. So he's obviously networking with the gang and trying to help people out as much as he can, which is great.
Well, and like separate from us trying to interact with him as the imposters, I hadn't realised, like you were messaging him during the day, and I'd assumed you'd already been kind of pitching this a little bit, but no, you just messaged him as a punter saying, "Hey, we might turn up tonight. Fucking, what do you reckon?" Kind of, having a bit of banter. And I was like, that was like, he's got millions of views on like a lot of TikTok videos. He's running his own headline at the Melbourne Comedy Festival, and he's just replying to you as a punter, which means he pretty much is replying to every punter.
Yeah, you'd assume so.
It was. Yeah, I was really.
I didn't even say anything nice to him. I just said, "Make sure you don't suck tonight." But I gave him the benefit of the doubt by sitting in the front row, so he could call me out if he wanted to. But but then afterwards he came and sat down with us after the show.
And he told people he'd be there drinking, and he did move through the whole bar, and you could see him having a chat with all the different groups that had come.
Yeah, it's interesting. It was also, he went through the different stuff that he's done. Like, so he's like, is anybody here is anyone here ex-defence? Is anyone here a chef or whatever it was? So he identified with pretty much most people in the audience.
Yeah.
But when he sat down with us, like we spoke to him, he's like, "Oh, what are you guys doing?" And we said, "Oh, we've come down from Geelong." And he's like, "Oh, okay, that's a fair drive." And then afterwards we said, like we're actually starting a podcast and stuff like that. So we're just looking for guests. He goes, "Oh, you need a guest, get me on." And then I said, well, funnily enough, another thing we do is we do challenges. And for example,
what is one of those challenges?
And I said, for example, Al has to do an open mic night where he's going to get up and do a set, and just straight up, he's just like, "Oh, he can come and open for me at a show." So
I really want to stress on that. I want to reiterate that we cold met a comedian at his own show. You told him those two things within 30 seconds, and his response was, "Oh, he can come and open for me." Like, all he knew about us was we both are veterans, like just cursorily knowing that in a few-minute conversation, and he offered something like that. Like, that was I was assuming I was going to have to go and do it at some, back alley open mic night, and all of a sudden it's like this opportunity presents. It was pretty it's a bit terrifying, but it's actually like probably the best way that I can possibly do this challenge. And we don't really know yet, but some other things were thrown around. Like, I might even be able to get a little bit of coaching from him on how to write a good bit and that sort of thing. But it's like what I said before, like, Jared just obviously is that sort of person that wants to lift people up and just get them involved in comedy. And what an astounding opportunity. So let's see what comes of it. I think, I owe it to make something out of this now and really commit to it with both feet in. So
I'm also super keen to have him on. Like, he's been talking about some stuff where, he was a chef who got out and went all in on being a comedian in March 2020.
Yeah.
Of all the timing, it was horrid. Like, there was obviously all shows had been shut down, but not just that. He couldn't even go back to hospitality because that had all been shut down, and he'd sold everything to buy all his gear to do his show, and he was living in his car for 2 months and things. So I'm really interested to have his story and have him on. But,
I think he'll be, a really effective imposter. And as you know, I've been doing a lot of research for our Zero Limits time this week, and Jared Goundry being a guest, has been a guest on Zero Limits. And I was saying to you before, he's talking about how comedy became a form of therapy. Like he'd had some struggles and he'd been a really high-performing chef and that sort of thing. And it's interesting just even contemplating doing this challenge that you've set me. I can really see that perspective now that it's a real oxymoron, like performing something when you got, all these sort of social anxiety issues and you don't really go out and do much. But it's actually really fitting because sometimes you just need a specific challenge and something to focus on with a goal and an end in mind. So like in some sense, I'm really keen to see this through and see if what he says is like true for everyone, that it can be a form of therapy. So
I'm also I really enjoyed the fact that we've had a bit on this week. Like we had Jess came on and she was talking about having a baby, and that was very amusing just to see you going bright red, trying to pretend you weren't there, focusing on a thing on the wall like you were, you're at a parade ground trying to not fall over or whatever. Just seeing that was hilarious. But then that same face happened again when we sat in the front row. And I'm just getting used to seeing this face now.
Yeah, it's funny. And because we all got called out about something to interact with during a couple of the comedians that night. It was quite funny. But
and then to have you, and then we sat down and we were talking and everything was all good and well. And then when he said you could open for me at a show, just seeing the initial reaction on your face was just, how did we go from 2 minutes ago I was just awkward from sitting upstairs and now I've literally got to get up on that stage and do whatever. But it was then funny to see, obviously you thought about it and just went, no, I'm keen. And that was an interesting transformation, because I don't know that a month ago that would have been your response.
Yeah, I don't know about a month ago, but the other thing I've been saying earlier is it's really hard to explain, but like I couldn't front up to the local cricket club and, try and have a hit at the moment. But there's something I've been trying to put my finger on it for a long time, but there's something about doing something where you're supposed to be. So if you're asked to be like a keynote speaker, it doesn't really bother me because you're supposed to be there. And even though I'll be a bit of a what do you call it? I'll be piggybacking this gig opening for him or whatever. It's like, you'll be announced. I was saying he'll probably joke that I'm like the Make-A-Wish kid or something, and it's all of a sudden it's just disarmed because you're given that opportunity by the person hosting. So it's really funny that stuff doesn't bother me too much. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, and trying to write some jokes is going to be fun.
Well,
but
to be fair, the bloke that went on first there had the toughest gig, trying to warm up the audience.
Yeah.
It seems as you go further along, it seems to be, it's like the openers when you're in batting and you rock up, and then obviously you've got to deal with the bowlers at their best, and then afterwards everyone's like, oh yeah. And
we learned some really interesting things from him, because when you're opening, no one's there to see you, I guess, let's say, even though this guy is like a named comedian as well, but he had this real good skill. He was engaging with the crowd, and it was like super awkward because he didn't get anything out of a few people, but he just owned it. He like looked down the barrel at this chick, and he's like, "Oh, that went nowhere. Let's move on." And he just picked on someone else, and I was like, "Okay,
yeah, sorry."
He's just a guy who has to roll with it because he's the one that opens the show, and so I'm gonna have to start going a few of these comedy things with a notepad and seeing how the opening acts do it all. But
I was just gonna try and see what old mate's name was.
Yeah, it was Zach. I had it up before as well. Give him a shout out.
Griddle or something like that. Anyway, you find it if you want.
Zach Riley.
Zach Riley. You may as well mention the blonde lady while she was there. She was good value.
And Ginny Holland. She was quite amusing. Yeah, you got to love someone that just owns their issue or their disability, let's say.
Yeah, or even uses it to her advantage. When she was
quite good.
Yeah. Apparently she's not allowed to make autistic jokes, though, because she's blind, not autistic. Anyway, worthwhile going to see her. She's funny as well.
And just go to see the comedy festival, I guess. It's like I said, I hadn't done it in many years, but I also heard Jared say that you can watch all these Netflix specials, but no joke is delivered like it is live, and I really agree with that. Like I hadn't laughed at comedy like I did on Friday night. So yeah, I reckon get out and see a show while they're around.
I liked also that he was, we should probably just move on because he's going to be on. He's just taken all his material for his life story here. Anyway, Jared ideally will be coming up at some point. Jared Gowndry is still here 2 weeks. He's here to the end of May at the Melbourne Cosmedy Festival. So I'd give you an affiliate link, but we don't have one. But Al will be opening at some point, and if he is, we will be sure to let you know that on Insta or however it is we're doing it now.
Yes.
100 listens without even going live. Impressive. Another stat we had recently, we got today, we've got 4 from America. Really confused.
Very random.
Yeah, I've got no idea because I haven't sent it to anyone in America. So,
well, the analytics will be very interesting over the next few weeks to actually see, where we're able to push this out and who takes interest in it. None of the biggest podcasts in the world are really Australian, but I don't think that you're limited by that. I just think it's, whatever market that you appeal to. So.
I'm also keen to actually find some other Australian podcasts and jump on. And speaking of, we're obviously going to go up and see old Matty Morris over in up in Newcastle. So that's our savvy road trip that we're doing up for Zero Limits. We're good.
Just piling it all in.
Sponsors are going to be jumping on board, surely. At some point, we'll be able to pay for the power in my house of a sponsorship deal, maybe. But, so that'll be like a 10-hour drive. But, stopping along the way. So we're going to do some what we've seen is called user-generated content, do some ads for Savvy along the way. He hasn't asked us to do that. I'm just doing it just because.
Oh, no, he did ask me to do it. Well,
okay.
Do it, but
fair
that
enough.
was in his personal email. He sort of wants like video testimonials for people. But, case in point, I think we would feel like real imposters having sponsors and all this sort of thing, and it'd be interesting to see what transpires. But we've talked about, well, I think that the optimal form of user-generated content is stuff that you're using or drinking anyway, which we are. So there's no real sales pitch to it. It's just genuinely promoting something that we have been enjoying and see some benefits in. So, yeah.
So we'll go up to Newcastle. So we're going to, Maddie's interviewing me as per one of the things that you guys wanted me to do. So that's one of the challenges we've got out of the way. Maddie's going to interview me. Then he's also kindly enough, being that Maddie's got a massive following and we've got us in the room and some guy or girl in America who's following us and listened to 4 of our episodes somehow.
He's doing a bit of pro bono charity for us this week.
Yeah, so Maddie's going to come on our pod, so that'll be interesting. It'll be good because he's got a massive amount of stories, no doubt. And just going from a bloke who was just talking stories with his mates to interviewing one of the blokes from War Dogs, that to me is an amazing tale. And anyway, like that alone to me is pretty successful. So
yeah, and I've been making notes on his intro, and it's just blows me away. Like, he's had Matt Eversman from Black Hawk Down. He's had like countless different special forces people from all around the world. It's just really humbling to have somebody who. And he interviews them so well, like he's really mastered the art of silence and just letting people speak. So
I'm pretty keen to see his setup and how he does things, and just the to and from, like whether he does, like us, where we sit down and get people used to using a microphone, or because everybody that goes on there seems to their audio sounds pretty good from what I've seen. So I'm interested to see how he runs it. So that'll be him. So he's interviewing me, we're interviewing him,
and that that's a pretty big thing because he's had lots of people ask to hear more about his own story. So, we'll have to do a good job. Yeah.
Like when we spoke to Jared, we were like, give us an inside goss on Matty Morris. So there's Matty's heads up. We're trying to dig information on him. But yeah, he was like, get him to interview himself because that'd be interesting. So that's the Newcastle road trip. Then we've got, what else have we said here? Said you're opening for Jared. We had our first female on, which was it's probably a lot more grotesque than all the blokes we've had on. Where we've talked about some jobs where there's been suicides and stuff, but none of that was anywhere near as gruesome as having a child.
Yeah, so we did a deep dive into, Jess, had communicated to us that she felt like an imposter, becoming pregnant and becoming a mother and all that sort of journey. And so, you were all for it. I was reluctant to get into it. Not that I didn't want to do it, but it was just a very, Yeah, like
it was funny because
deep conversation about.
I hadn't seen you nervous
something
about
men don't
interviewing someone.
experience.
Yeah, because that was the first time I've seen you sort of almost nervous. Like, what do I ask? What can I ask?
I think what can I ask? I think was the big one, and we both. I hope there's some great shorts that come out of it, but there was some words and some terms that Jess used, and it's like hang on
like
a
mucus plug.
Okay, what is a mucus plug? Like you sort of We're the dumb people in the room. Let's ask it. Let's put it out there.
And you knew beforehand when she'd said some proper term, and you were like, "Look, I don't know what that stands for, but I know it's not going to be something I want to hear, but I'm going to ask anyway." And you're like, "Yeah, no, I was correct. I didn't want to hear about that."
I hope we've done a good service to some soon-to-be fathers, maybe that can listen to this and have some of their dumb questions answered.
And more so because that was one of the things I listened to in episode 1 about how we're obviously very male orientated, and we've obviously got our viewpoints coming from where we are, how we could resonate with the opposite sex, for example. So I hope that I hope women enjoy that conversation and find it funny having us be awkward for a change.
Yeah, and I hope that, and a real credit to Jess for speaking so candidly and so deeply about that experience. But I think she's done a real service as well, that if we have any future mothers or pregnant women listen to it, she's really dispels some of those fears. And the other thing that I really took from it is that, most women go back and have a second and a third child. So it's,
Well, I think she was saying that's like a PTSD compartmentalization thing.
We didn't get to touch on it, but there was like some sort of memory loss that she indicated was like a biological thing that you deliberately forget what it was like.
Well, we were going to get into it, but you started rocking in the corner and we had to get your 3 Valium, so things got awkward. But it'll be interesting to see how that goes too, because obviously our demographic is going to be our friends and family at the start, which is going to be veteran first responders, etc. But it'll be interesting to see if people are looking at birthing stories now, and if they jump on across.
Challenge yourself to listen to it. It was worthwhile. You'll learn something.
But I'm more concerned that ends up being our highest doing.
That would be very.
And then I'm worried that this pod,
to pivot.
Yeah, and exactly, because then our pod turns into blokes get grossed out by birthing stories. Like that's our new niche. Is where everybody comes on and tells us about a horrific 48-hour pregnancy of which there was stitches, mucus plugs, green waters breaking, etc., etc.
Yeah, but no, get into it. It was
that's how I summed it up.
But it also speaks to something, and we'll have to not fall prey to it too often. But when you interview people that are in your fields and your world, you're probably not the best people at asking the dumb questions or the things that people want to know. So it's something we'll probably have to keep doing, is finding people outside our wheelhouse. Because there's probably all sorts of, mothers and birthing podcasts, and I'm sure they do a great job, but I've no doubt we asked questions that they wouldn't even think to, because they just have some assumptions or things they already know. So we'll see how that goes.
Like us with cop stuff or army stuff or whatever, where you've got all the jargon, you've got the abbreviations, you've got the assumed knowledge beforehand. It's like almost the implied consent that you can come up to the front door and stuff. Like people will be like, "Get off my lawn," and it's like, well, that's when the thing changed from implied consent to now you're trespassing. Whereas, like if you just said, "Oh, it's implied consent," people are like, "What?" I mean, the words sort of make sense, but you don't really understand what they are. So it's the same as when you jump into a subject you've got no idea about. So, and there'll be plenty of people saying, and I've had people say already for other interviews that they've heard us do, but they're like, "Oh, I wish you'd delved more into that, or you'd done this and you'd done that." Sorry. And one of the things is we're trying to work out, how long should a podcast be? Like we sort of, if we just do it for basically a train ride or a to and from work scenario, that's one thing we could do, which is roughly sort of 45 minutes to an hour for a lot of people. So if we can do that, that'd be ideal. But then, someone gets into a story and it goes to 120, and then after it's been 120, people start saying, well, you should have asked this, you should have asked this. And like, if you ask every question, and that's where Zero Limits is, a lot of the time they're 3 hours, his podcast, because he asks every question. And he's like, I don't care how long this takes, I will ask every question I have. Whereas I think ours is going to be a little bit more, we'll try and stick to around 40 to an hour, and then if that needs to be followed up, we'll try and have a bit of back and forth, because like I tried to get McConnell and Caruana on today. Sure, I gave them about an hour's notice. One's sick, one's playing baseball, but It'll be. I'm looking forward to having people come back as guests. So if people do have questions, we can get them back on and go, hey, look, after that podcast came out, people have been asking this, and this. Do you mind doing a follow up? And if we can follow up where they are, because we've given them challenges as well. So that'll be an interesting follow up where we can get, hey, such and such is coming back on again. They've got a response to the challenge that we gave them. They're going to challenge us, and any questions you guys have, hit us up so we can ask them on the next time round. So I feel like that might be how we end up going. But again, we might end up just doing birthing stories from now on.
Yeah, you never know. I think I love consuming some of the real long podcasts these days, 4 or 5 hour interviews, but I think you really have to earn that from your listeners. So I think breaking them up at the moment where, we're just trying to earn your trust and get you to believe in us and follow us, and hopefully we, have the capacity to do some really long deep dives in the future. But
some other questions we had was, if we do ones that are longer and we break them up into 40-minute episodes, so they say there's 3 of them there and then we do them one every week, is that going to be upsetting people because we're taking 3 weeks now to get the whole thing out? They're like, I just want to hear the next one. And it's interesting to see where would we be better off spacing it out because people are like, oh, I can't wait for the next one, or if that's going to upset people that they're like, well, you've already done it, so just put it out this week. Whether we do one on Monday, Wednesday, and then Friday, so it gives people time to edit it, etc. Or whether we just want to stick to our weekly one so we have time to get another guest. So it's sort of I
don't know how capable we are of marketing strategies. I think we just need to honour the listeners, and if they want to see them every couple of days, that's probably But let us know. Give us the feedback how you'd like to listen to the interviews, whether they're broken up over a couple of days.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing too is we can do more podcasts if we do them like this, where we're just like, hey, do you want to do an update? Where we just come in and do it, because the guests is going to be the hardest part to do, because you got to link up with them and do whatever. Whereas we're a lot more free to just do one on an afternoon or on a Sunday afternoon like we are now. So it's going to be time management. Then we've got obviously who's doing our editing, how busy he is, or it's just sort of there'll be questions asked. It'll probably come and go. I'm sure there'll be a period where we are quiet for a bit. There'll be other times we're like, hey, we've got heaps of stuff on. Like at the moment, things just seem to have been falling into our lap. So whether that gains momentum or whether that sort of peters out and then we're on struggle street trying to do stuff, we'll see how that goes. But Newcastle, and then in May we have Frontline Safari, which is great. I'll have Clay Marks. He'll come on and talk to us about how he just decided he was going to make an event to get veterans together right across the Simpson Desert and raise money for certain charities. So that'll be interesting to have him on. But also people that go on his safari will be there. We'll take our gear. I mean, that'll be another test and adjust with how we go, being that I don't know how this goes with a battery pack, etc. But that'll be great for reels, having the desert in the background and chatting to some people.
Absolutely. I think that's probably our natural habitat too, especially with some new guests that we don't know. I think sitting around on camp chairs is probably where we'll do our best. I really found with Jess during the week as well that she was the first guest that we don't know or didn't know well, and it was a lot. There's a lot more skill in trying to ask the right questions and know when to let them talk or when to, circle them back to something. Whereas when we've interviewed people that, we've worked with or we've been associated with, we might not be directing them to all the stuff that maybe other people would want to hear. But from our point of view, it's a lot easier to run those conversations.
And also having, most of the people we've had so first responder military are used to talking on the radio and then just waiting for the next person to speak and get your response. Whereas, and then how close to speak to a microphone, though, that's new. A lot of people with handheld mics are obviously doing whatever, but even now I can hear myself going on the microphone, which is a thing where, if everyone just lost an eardrum, my apologies. So just getting where people can go to and from in front of a microphone is new. And then if they've never done that before, and then like even just with her headphones on, and she was like, I can't hear me. I don't know what's going on. Just little technical issues that we're obviously ironing out, which is great. But eventually, hopefully, somebody wants to jump on board and be an amazing sound producer for us. Or
if anyone wants to do a traineeship and get some credits up for their course or something, or
if people have like videography stuff that they want to do, or who knows. I think with the challenges it'll be good too, because I'd rather do the challenges, record them and put them on YouTube, Because like you're doing stand-up, for example, like me just sitting there with a microphone going, oh, Al's walking on the stage. He looks scared. Like that's a given. But like if you can see it, I think that's a real thing where we can make that a bit more better production quality.
Yeah, and that's how, we plan to iterate things. But there's a lot of effort that goes into video content and as well as, the audio stuff that we're doing at the moment. So we'll keep stepping logically through this stuff and try and provide more and more.
Do you want to give us an update on Frontline Safari? We just talked about that. Frontline Safari, by the way, is they go across the Simpson Desert. Goes for about, I think it's a 5-day thing, but you've got to get to the desert. You look at it, 20,
so it's a dirt bike safari.
Yeah. But we're going across as support. So we'll be in my 4-wheel drive van for however long that holds out. It's 1997 Mitsubishi Delica for those who want to Google it. It's a bit of a meme machine. But then we've also got Hard Enduro. Are you taking a step back on that? What's happening?
Yeah, I'm not sure. We're thinking through a few things at the moment, but doing the video content, especially weekly, is very very immersive. And we've discussed why we started that channel on here before, on my sort of interview episode, but I guess some of the goals have changed a little bit, but it's also just a bit of a balancing act. So I think we'll probably continue to produce some content, but just at a far less frequency when it's something very much worth showing.
But because on that, we were talking about the fact that you'd had 10,000 views on it last time. It was a really big deal. Probably not to Mr. Beast probably isn't concerned about you taking his viewers, but like that video now is up to 15,000. So it's not like it's,
no, all the metrics are going really well.
How many subscribers you got now?
750. So we're close to the 1,000 checkpoint.
And
getting closer.
And how much watch hours you got?
It's around 5,000 now.
Oh, really? So you're already over. So you need 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours in a 12-month period, isn't it?
So for most people, the hours come way before the subscribers.
Oh, that's standard?
That's very standard,
okay.
Yeah. It's less so if you pump the shorts because you can get cheap subscribers that way.
Cheap subscribers?
But I say that if you're predominantly there to make long-form content, the feedback at the moment is that you'll destroy your algorithm and your followers by trying to get easy subscribers through shorts. So there's a lot of nuances around that stuff, but I don't know. I think it's just a thinking phase on that at the moment. We certainly put a lot of good work into it and had some, success for how far we've gone. But
so is it the YouTube, do you reckon, or is it the environment trying to get everybody up and about and try and do things?
There's definitely an element of making your hobby your job.
Yeah.
That's problematic because, we've talked a lot about this before, but for me, the dirt bike is therapy, is the mental health machine. So although making video content about it has some real positives as well, every time you do something with that dirt bike, you're thinking about the content element of it, or how can we get 3 videos out of what we do today? And it's just not that enjoyable when it's supposed to be your escape as well. So I think, and a lot of YouTube coaches talk about this, you're almost better to pick some sort of random thing that the Google Trends might show there's a bit of a gap, because you'll still have to do all the work, but you won't burn out one of your hobbies or your passions. So I'm a bit 50-50 on that, but we'll see. I think if we just do it at a lesser scale, and there was the old saying we used to use, like trying to herd cats, and all the bigger format stuff we do, we've just got friends and people coming to give their time, but it's quite hard to coordinate, especially if you're putting money into a video and trying to plan things. I've been trying to plan a coaching ride with a professional rider, and I'm going to have to sink a fair bit of money in it to do that. And I'm thinking at the moment, it's like I'm probably not even going to ride a bike on that day. So I want to do the coaching, I want to do the learning, but it's like I'm going to sink a fair bit of money into this just to produce a video, and I'm not even going to learn any skills out of it myself. So I don't know. It's just some deep thinking on it at the moment, and I think probably a more occasional video. Now that we've got a good base on there, maybe doing a really quality thought out video that with YouTube, you get people interacting in comments. So we have a big list of things that, we could just always tick off the thing that comes to the top of the list that's been most asked for, and maybe provide some value to the enduro community that way.
Cool. Thoughts on running an Imposter YouTube channel as well?
As in me running it, or us?
Just us in general, I would suggest.
No,
because obviously the editing is a lot more time, et cetera, but like with the challenges, for example, like if Caruana ends up getting into the Fire's calendar, I want to film the shoot.
When he's holding a cat and
whatever it is he wants to run with. That'd be interesting. Obviously, you'll stand up and be a thing, but I dare say Jared will have that for content, which will be great.
No, YouTube is inevitable and necessary for what we're doing here, and I think a lot of it will be short format, although we'll probably publish the podcast as a long form thing at some stage, but there's a lot of easier technological ways to do that and to have AI editing and screen or camera switching for that, as opposed to going out with 4 GoPros and a drone and all these different cameras that aren't synced up and there's sound coming from different places. So, I think it's more manageable, and I've learned a lot of good stuff that should benefit our YouTube channel. Yeah.
So a guest we'd like to have, I'm going to try and get Frenchie.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I'd like to get Mr. Cunny's Adam Sullivan coming around. That'd be good.
Sorry, like is it right to call him a gym bro? Like he's just a really
successful one.
But what's his story? What does he promote?
So he does it's called evidence-based training, and he basically just throws the C-bomb out of a whole bunch and talks to about calories in, calories out. But he runs different fitness things. But the thing that really got me interested was it's a lot of no bullshit stuff where he's just like, look, sure, at the end of the day, it's calories in versus calories out. Sure, we can all argue about which calories are worth more and worth not, but it's just calories. And he's like, if not, go F yourself, sort of thing. Yeah. And it's funny because I didn't see anyone else doing that at the start because, if you use certain terms, a lot of times you get shadow banned, et cetera. But he's just like, no, this is just what I do. And then since then, I've seen a few other people get involved and do that. So I'd like to have him on. But then he does do the occasional one where he must just be feeling like, how did this happen to me? And he just does a lot of gratitude posts and stuff. And it's funny because he has to, he'll be sitting there in his Lambo or whatever it is. And he's like, look, he goes, I get it. Half of you are going to think this is me being an arrogant F-wit. And he's like, but he goes, I just want to go, I didn't have this 3 years ago. He goes, me driving this car now was not something I thought that was going to happen. He goes, I just kept trying, kept pushing, doing whatever. And then eventually something happened. And then, and it's interesting where people say stuff like, oh, it took me 7 years to get where I was. But other people see it was an overnight success, because it generally seems to be, if you keep putting yourself out there, eventually it is one thing that makes you an overnight success. But it's like it took you 5 years of trying different stuff to find that success. So I'd love to have him on to talk about that. He can do a couple of spinning Turkish heel kicks or whatever it is that he does. But, he's funny. I met him the other day. Obviously, I got a free jumper, so now I feel like with the law of reciprocity, I want to try and do something for him.
Fitness Expo, and you met him a couple of days ago.
Which was funny because there was heaps of people there. There's big bodybuilders there and that sort of stuff. He's not a massive unit. He's fit, obviously.
He looks like a unit, but then in the photo, you're taller than him. He's pretty jacked, but
he has abs. I don't have abs, but he's not your massive, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lou Ferrigno size dude, but because he's obviously got a amazing following of people, there was a huge line for him. And I waited 30 minutes to go speak to a bloke I'd never met before in my life, just because he's hilarious and I like what he's all about. So that'd be great to have him on. Frenchie, I reckon, would be hilarious. And, he draws his own abs on, he couldn't be further from.
Probably the loosest person in Australia.
Yeah, but, he used to be a teacher and then just decided, nah, I'm not into it. I'm just going to make jokes and see how I go. And now he's hilarious and he's traveling around.
He'd actually be great to see live too, because he really just improvs off the audience all night and just kills it.
Yeah. I love the call on the bloke to just sit there and sort of, and Matt Rife does it as well, where he just goes there and goes, have a crack.
Yeah.
He's like, you're in my element, so I would love you to have a go. Yes, because me smashing you is going to make better content.
It'd be interesting, and I wonder if, we got someone like Frenchie, whether he'd sit down with us in character, but There,
I don't know
there's
that he is a character.
Well,
is he?
I don't know, but there's some people that definitely are playing a character, and it'd be interesting to delve into some of those and see whether you're just sitting. I don't even know what his real name is, but it's just John French or something. Sit down with John French.
I just feel like he's the kind of bloke that'll listen to us going, no, I'm sure he's just playing a character. You'll rock up and just do a shoey in my front yard, like just draw some abs on and do it.
He just got married. He did a shoey during the speeches.
Did he?
And in his wedding photos, he pulled up his tuxedo and he had his abs drawn on. And I'm like, well, obviously his wife is all over this personality, but good on him.
Who else? We're talking about Aussie Arvos. That'd be great to have them on.
Yeah, the young lads. Yeah. I think I'd really like to sit down with them because they've been going for about 4 years now, but they started pretty much at 18 when they got their P plates, and so they're a four-wheel drive channel in Australia. And the effort they put into their productions and the research is just really humbling. And a couple of their dads are kind of obviously mechanics and engineers that coach them in the background. But I've learned more about some basic servicing and lift kits from these guys that are just probably 21, 22 now than from probably anything else I've watched.
Is it Dan, that one that...
Dan, the mechanic?
Yeah. Amazing.
Like for a young guy, the way that he delivers information about mechanics, not even basic. Like they did they put a turbo onto an old Nissan Patrol and he steps through every part of it. And I'm like, I could literally replicate this from this video. So,
did you see the one where he took an auto apart and put it back together, service it?
Yeah.
I have zero interest in doing that, but I watched that whole thing and I was like, that's amazing because I'd never known how an auto works.
Yeah.
And I was just like, how am I watching this kid tell me how to do? It's something that I should probably know.
Patrick did a 20-minute video on the history of CB radios and UHF and how it all works and, coaching people on using repeater stations if they get in trouble and have an emergency. And I was just
really?
I was captivated for 20 minutes listening to, talk about radios. So I think that'd be great.
They seem so humble.
We'd love to maybe go on a camping trip and sit down and do around the fire interview with some people like that.
Mm. And they just seem super humble. Like every time they get invited to something, they're just like, what are we doing here?
Yep.
Like they sort of sum up the imposter.
And they've hit 100,000 YouTube subscribers and they've just got their first major sponsors. And they basically did, I don't know if you saw this one, they did a bit of a video about that all sort of happening for them. And they're just you could just see how blown away they were that this is, and they're sort of contemplating holy shit, this is a real career for us. We've all kind of doing apprenticeships at the moment, but we could just keep doing this and this could be our career.
But they seem to be the kind of guys that would still do and finish their apprenticeship thing because they're just look, this could blow up at any point. Yeah. They're like, let's be smart about it and do whatever. But I've seen them, at four-wheel drive shows and stuff, they're invited there and they do commentaries and
I think they're up at the Brisbane show. They did a big road trip at the moment to go to one of the shows. So, that'd be great. I think to have some people that young that have actually achieved something and done it in a really grassroots way would be cool.
So, obviously we're open to pretty much speaking to anybody that's overcome adversity to get ahead, or even if you I'd love to actually speak to someone that's never had imposter syndrome.
I think we should do that, yeah.
I feel like Donald Trump.
Well,
at no point has ever been concerned about not winning something, I don't think.
Well, so I've been talking about this theory, and I'm not saying, Donald Trump would be the pillar for this, but, there's this, the opposite of imposter is probably bravado or the ego. And we've talked about some of the people we've worked with before, just some of them that have that bravado and whether it's all covering for how, so maybe they're the most extreme imposter where the bravado is all covering for them. And, we've all got a few anecdotes where that one person who you thought would be good to go on the day where you had a massive critical incident or something, and then they're actually the one that, balks and backs away and you're like, oh, okay, that's all been for show the whole time. Whereas, the kind of quiet achiever is often the one that steps up on that day. And it's really interesting if you ever get to see people at that critical stress point of their life, you really find out who's who. So I don't know, it'd be fun to interview a few cocky or arrogant people and
it sounds like it's going to end up being an ambush though.
Well, yeah. and that's what's hard is, you don't want to do it as a stitch up, but just if there was someone, where we could actually explore where that overconfidence, I don't know, maybe just someone who is just confident and just kills it, what their actual psyche is.
It's like how you've got people with psychopaths, have no remorse, don't feel emotions and all that sort of stuff. And you're like, well, a lot of those people are your war heroes. They are your
it's 3 out of every 100 people in any society. So
they reckon it's higher in first responders, politicians and that sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, like it's provided you use it for good, you can
I think
potentially
if you're more
excel.
on the sociopath side than the psychopath, like you can be directed for good. Like, they are the people in a heat of battle that you want around, just not necessarily day to day.
Yeah, and like a lot of your CEOs apparently seem to be happy because you're very isolated when you reach the top. So you need to be able to be self-sufficient. That's it, mate, I reckon.
Yep.
I think we've wrapped up everything we need to where we're at.
And then we can come back and be accountable for some of the things that we're talking about on imminent launch day.
Mouthing off about. Anyway, thanks for having us again, gang. And
speak to you all soon.
Yeah.
And hope you enjoy the cluster of episodes that have just been dropped.
Oh, and Savvy. Imposter. Type Imposter, see what happens. You'll get a discount. Yeah.
Right, you'll love it.
I don't know if you need the capitals.
The limitless drink.